take a look at it. It is really, really special.
Okay, great.
Mics are on.
Thank you.
Lots
Bring
of
enough for everybody?
pictures.
You bring enough for everybody?
No. I just discovered that in my pocket.
Here's, as we go on, you can kind of file through it. It's just really neat what they've done. This is in Washington. Took all the pictures. They said it was just stunning. It was just really wonderful how they had it done. It was so pedestrian friendly.
I don't have the script or
Tell if he's ready when the light's out, because it's black. I can only see black. Okay, all right. On record?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, well, welcome to our Villages at Cascade Head Plan Unit Development Preliminary Master Plan Request for Proposal Work Session. Lincoln City City Council Chambers, February 29, 2016. It's 3:04 p.m. It's yours, sir. Oh, I guess, do
roll
we
call
do a
or
roll
anything?
call?
Just go around.
Okay,
Kathy
you'll
Steer,
start.
City Recorder.
On mic, please.
Richard Appicello, City Attorney.
Dick Anderson. Wes Ryan.
Susan Waukee.
Don Williams.
Jet Norikis.
Roger Sprague.
Ron Chandler.
Richard Townsend.
Okay. All yours, sir.
Okay. I have drafted a request for proposals to develop a new master plan for the Villages at Cascade Head property. What I want to do is give you some background and then go into the substance of the request for proposals and see if we've put in things that we should and left out things that we should have put in. Seeing Chester.
Mr. Mayor? Is this a master plan, Mr. Townsend, or a preliminary master plan?
It's the preliminary master plan, and I'll explain that as I go along too.
And if I could just with
Procedurally,
Richard, just one second, just with council's approval, since this is just a work session, I think we can suspend the requesting detention from the chair, if you don't mind, unless you all get out of hand. So, all right, thank you. Yes.
so behave yourselves. Okay, I went the planned unit development process. First is a preliminary master plan for the entire development. That's a conceptual level plan saying this is where we want things to go. Then what has been the sort of the unique case in the Villages of Cascade Head, then there's been a refined preliminary master plan for each of the three villages that make up the Villages of Cascade Head. Normally, there's just a preliminary master plan. If that's approved, then a final master plan, which basically has to be consistent with the preliminary, and it's approvable. So, and then get back to the Villages of Cascade Head, then there'll be a final master plan for each of the blocks within each village. And I'll get into that a little bit. So, the Villages of Cascade Head, the preliminary master plan originally was approved in 1996 and then revised in 1998. And that's the plan that the Villages is currently subject to. This called for 1,829 units of single-family homes, manufactured homes, condos, townhouses, and did they say manufactured? Okay. Yeah, condos, townhouses, and I think that's it. So.
Richard, would you explain why that's a preliminary master plan rather than the final?
It's just to get conceptual approval. It's saying this is what we want it to be like, and it's rather than invest in the sort of the detailed surveying and everything that goes into a final master plan. We do a process of a preliminary master plan saying, yeah, your concept is good. And then you come back with the final master plan in detail with a subdivision plat and so on to make it real, exactly where the roads are going to go, exactly where the lots are going to be, and that kind of thing. So like in this case, the map that's up there now is the map for the preliminary master plan from 1998 for the Villages at Cascade Head. You can see there's just a fairly sketchy road network. From the bottom, West Nose Lake Boulevard coming up, And presently, it stops right about here next to this, between this E, blocks E and G here. That's where the cul-de-sac is that exists now. The right-of-way has been dedicated to about here, but none of these other roads exist other than Clancy Road, which is a whole different issue. So. But if you look at this, the green is parks, open space, or wildlife corridors and wetlands. The relatively light green up at the top is the 60 acres that the developer gave to the city back in the 90s. 60 acres, and that's actually part of the Cascade Head Scenic Research Area under some jurisdiction of the Forest Service. The yellow are single-family areas, proposed to be single-family. The brown is sort of what they call medium density in this case, and that's the condos and townhouses. So you can see in the southern area of the plan, there's relatively little single-family and relatively more multifamily and condos and townhouses in that area. So the preliminary master plan was for the full 525 acres. Divided the property into 3 villages, and then each village is a phase, and each village is divided further into individual blocks. So in this case, there were 3 villages. Down at the bottom here is phase 1 was Rock Creek Village. Phase 2 sort of runs east and west through there, Salmon Creek Village. And then phase 3 is this higher area, including the knoll over here on the left side, the Logan Creek Village, phase 3.
Richard, can you email those to us?
Can I what?
Can you email those to us?
Sure.
I would appreciate that.
Sure.
I've got this one and it works well. That's a new one that we don't have.
Okay. And focusing in a little bit here on Rock Creek Village, which is the phase 1, it includes really everything sort of below this green area, but also including this block. So we have from the south, we have block A prime down here. That's Maplewood, the area that's developed.
And that's owned by another party, Richard? Is
That's
that
owned by several parties. Those are individual lots have been sold off in that area. But what hasn't been sold to individual property owners is owned by another developer. A1 down here, owned by another property owner. A is Fernwood. B, which is these areas, is owned by another property owner. That's Marge Boyd. She's in the Portland area. Then Block C, and this is now owned by the tribe. Block D, owned by another property owner, the same property owner that owns Block A1. And E, F, and G. There's something called a town center that was really not what you would think of as a town center. I think they were talking about a little tiny interpretive kiosk kind of thing, but nothing that would be a real, what you might think of as like the town square and that kind of thing.
Not similar to a Sun, not like a Sun River.
No, not at all.
Richard, before you leave, that Block C belongs to the tribe, you said?
Right.
And they have a commitment to expand the golf course, is that right?
Not to us. They have, actually, the golf course property is another planned unit development. And actually, they amended their planned unit development to take that property into the golf course planned unit development. It was never officially taken out of the village's plan,
Right.
which is one of the reasons why we want to revise the plan.
Excuse me, but the 2 sections that are marked D and the WH2 are on the east side of C.
Right.
How do you get to them?
Right now,
I mean, how would you get there?
actually, there's a little strip running across the top of C that is owned by the property owner of D, the idea that that would be
The roadway into that?
roadway into it. It may well make sense that these shouldn't be in the villages, given that what's happening here, and I'll go into that a little bit more as we go along. Just also these WH3, WH2, those are wetland habitats or I'm sorry, wetlands or wildlife habitats. There's P, which is parks, which is all these areas that are in different colors of green were always intended to be not developed, kept in a natural state. And you can see there's areas scattered in there throughout.
And Richard, of the number of building lots that you indicated, the 1,800 plus, does that include the strip of D to the east of C?
Yes,
So that would be revised then if we ended up
presumably, yes.
redoing the plan.
And Rich, if I could ask, on the wetlands, is that by our choice?
It was by the developer's choice.
Okay, but no federal requirements, no state
No,
requirements?
there are some areas that have some protected species in them, but mostly that requires timing and, like if you bridge, like the wetlands, if you cross the wetlands, it has to be done in a certain manner at a certain time of year. The construction has to be done.
So we're not locked into these, though?
No, we're not locked into it, but it may well be smart.
I'm not saying it's not, I just want to know what the options are.
So Rock Creek Village is made up of several of these individual blocks. Block A, remember that's Fernwood, was approved for 200 townhomes. Block A prime, that's Maplewood, 18 townhomes. Block A1, 150 condos. B, 184 condos, that's the piece that Marge Boyd owns. Block C, 70 manufactured homes.
Well, but C now is not there, correct? That's now tribal land.
It's now tribal land. Yeah, I'm just saying what's in the plan, what was approved in the plan.
So all of the manufactured homes essentially went away.
Those 70 would have gone away. Yeah.
That's what I wanted to know.
And actually, there were several hundred manufactured, I want to say 400 and something manufactured homes. I think it's in the RFP. It says how many there were, but this was in this area.
Okay.
70 of them. 30 townhomes in Block D. Block E, 63 single-family homes. F, 52 townhomes. G, 96 condos. And there's various areas of parks, wetlands, and wildlife corridors. So that was in the refined preliminary master plan for Rock Creek Village, which was approved in 1998. And then each of those blocks that I just went through would be required to get a final master plan approved by the Planning Commission. The conditions of approval, I should also mention that the preliminary master plan and refined preliminary master plan for Rock Creek Village have many pages of conditions attached to them, about 90 conditions in each case. One of the conditions in both cases is that there has to be a final master plan for a block every 2 years. And that was done away with, but it was that was one of the things when the real estate was going well, there was no problem with this, but when things took a downturn, it became quite a problem.
Richard?
What became a problem, Richard?
The fact that there had to be a final master plan approved for individual blocks every 2 years, so you get block B approved, and then
Right.
2 years later you have to have another one.
Okay.
2 years later you have to have another one.
Richard, do these townhomes qualify as workforce housing?
Possibly. You know, again, this was at this point, it was so conceptual. The details of what would happen were really never worked out. So, but I will say that final master plan for block, I think it's I think it actually would be A1. No, I think that's right, A prime. was approved in 2004, and then for Block A in 2006, and that was the last final master plan, so there hasn't been one for 10 years yet. We did, the Planning Commission did grant extensions at various times, and then revised the conditions that do away with that requirement. Since then, there have been quite a few changes. Again, these plans were approved back in 1998. That was the last time the whole thing was looked at closely. I want to draw your attention again. This is Rock Creek Village. Block A1 down here, Block C up here. I want to draw your attention to those in particular. Golf course proposal. You can see faintly here behind it is the Villages Cascade Head plan that you have in front of you. The proposed golf course extension overlaid it. This, you can see this sort of inverted L shape. It's right here. So this is where Block C is. This is where Block A1 is, down in here. This land down here is the existing golf course, and they were going to extend over on the other side of 101 as well. You may recall they were talking about a tunnel under the highway for connections. So closing in again, Block C is here, Block A is here, and when this property was taken out of the villages, you know, this was 100 and some condos, and all of a sudden some of those are gone, but we don't know how many. Block C was the manufactured homes, that's gone. And also, there was a wildlife corridor in here, which was, we have a rule for the villages at Cascade Head, a condition of approval that you can't cut trees. And one of their fairways, as proposed, goes right across one of those wildlife corridors, and so there was some strong concern about that on the part of the tribe. But since it's still in the, well, if it were under our jurisdiction, it would still be subject to that condition. But of course, it's not in our jurisdiction anymore, so that control is not in place. Anyway, so Block A prime, 150 condos. That's this area in here. Sort of pinkish area you can see, but we don't know exactly where they are. I mean, that's an idea, but don't know exactly where. Block C had these manufactured home sites. So some or all of those are gone. There also have been ordinance changes since the plan was adopted. In 2008, we made a major revision to the planned unit development ordinance that had a number of effects. One is to allow density bonuses rather than just having the base density, and that's what you get. We put in various possible density bonuses you could get for how the floodplain development does or doesn't occur, development on steep slopes, development in areas of protected species habitat, public transit, accessible design, energy efficiency, water conservation, tree preservation. Those you could get various amounts of density bonuses for maximum of 10% additional density for those things. Then there was an additional density bonus for affordable housing, and that was an additional 10% density bonus if 5% of your project consisted of affordable housing. The idea between the 10% for 5% is basically those extra 5% of units basically subsidize the 5% of affordable housing. It's to be an incentive for a developer to be able to get more money if they put in some affordable housing.
Richard, did we have a number for that to qualify as affordable housing?
As I don't have the ordinance in front of me, I think it was, it's the same issue we've had before, where it's sort of as defined by the city, but we haven't formally defined it yet. And another change is that in the planned unit development ordinance, we allow, in large planned unit developments, those over 100 acres, that have a substantial amount of their property in open space or park, they're allowed up to 15% of the property to be commercial property. The former owner of the property was very interested in that, was looking hard at it, in particular in these areas of Block E and G. E is single-family homes, G is, I believe it's condos in the approved plan. But they're looking at something possibly intensive. This would be Block G over here, and they were looking at the possibility of like a convention hotel with a conference center, and then mixed-use development down below with shops with apartments above, and some single-family homes in the southern part of it. Another view, again, here's the hotel and conference center. And these, this is a relatively high elevation there. So probably on the floors above the first, you probably get an ocean view there. And then again, shops and apartments down here. They had an alternative, much less intensive commercial development of like one-story or small shops, similar to what you'd see in Cannon Beach, where you go through that area where there's little courtyards of 6 or 8 shops, one story, maybe maximum of 2. Another change was obviously when the city bought the property, the knoll, which is this property right here, put into open space. That's not reflected in the current plan. Another view of the knoll from the beach.
What section is that now?
Pardon me?
What section is that?
That is in Block N.
That's the lower block N on the map?
Let me look. I believe it's upper Block N.
I'm a little confused.
It's the sort of the
Deborah's saying upper.
upper cent, right, like from the letter N
Right.
up is the
Okay.
knoll.
Okay.
And actually, what we put aside for the open space, you see that blue area on the map you have in front of you?
I don't have a color.
It's the water reservoir.
I didn't.
That was the site they were thinking of for water reservoir. From there, much of that Block N is now open space.
Okay. Mine didn't.
It connects up to that green area, the P11 at the very top, the 60 acres that the city got. And this is view from the knoll looking south, Devil's Lake in the distance on the left, and the ocean on the right there. Much of what you see among the trees is the villages of Cascade Head. So at that point, quite undeveloped, we get a little bit of, I think that's Maplewood down there peeking in. Then, of course, we've just recently gone out with a request for qualifications for purchase and development of Fernwood. And we, as I believe I told you, we got 2 responses, and expect to meet later this week with one of the proposers or one of the submitters to work out an approach and see what our next steps might be. This was the idea of what the houses in Fernwood would look like, according to the original developer. He had a number of different plans, floor plans, some of which could be conceivably like workforce housing, affordable housing kind of thing. What we've said in the request for qualifications is we want to incorporate workforce housing in this. We're not saying necessarily that it all has to be, but we want workforce housing in there. And I believe from a planning standpoint, one of the best things you can do with workforce housing is integrate it into, I guess what the developer might think of as higher-end housing, so that you don't create areas of sort of high-end, low-end kind of houses where everything's together. It's similar stylistically, and they can be smaller in size, but integrated together so you have more of a community.
Richard, was this type of housing taken into consideration with the big dips that come off of the edge of the road that goes through it? In other words, when we walked that, we discovered that there are some big dips where you would expect a lot would be.
Yeah, that was definitely taken into consideration. They had very detailed topographic information. They'd done a lot of surveying. They knew what was there. And in the refined preliminary master plan for this block, there were a lot. Like I said, it was approved for 200 townhomes. When they came back with the final master plan, it was significantly reduced in scope. They divided it into two phases, and the one phase that probably would have had 120 or something in it ended up being, I think, 60 units in it, because they just realized they just couldn't be done to get that many on the site realistically. And that really raises one of the main points of why we want to do this revision to the plan. Is we've got these plans saying there can be 1,800 units, 1,829 units, but realistically, is that even possible? Especially when in Lincoln City we've been averaging over the last, say, 15 years, 20 years, maybe 50 new houses, 50 or 60 new houses a year. 1,829 is a lot to absorb. It's lifetime supply and more.
Richard, those little townhouses that you had in the previous slide, about how many square feet are they?
I don't have that in front of me right now. It varied from, I think, I may be making this up, but I think the smallest was about 900 up to, they had several different floor plans, up to something more than 2,000. This is just an aerial of the village. You can see the knoll over here. This is another high area, and actually this is in the 60 acres that is open space and part of the Cascade Head Scenic Research Area. I put this in just to give you an idea of how forested the site is and the variety of landforms and vegetation types that are in there. You just see a little peak right here. That's the poly farm.
So how many in Fernwood, how many sites do we have, home sites?
Right now there's, in phase one, I think there's 60, I think it's 60 in phase one. Phase two is not platted yet. The whole thing, phase one and phase two, in the preliminary master plan is approved for, like I said, 200. But the final master plan for phase one is only 60. And there probably were about 120 on that site in the preliminary master plan.
So we've got 60 and our current is 50 a year.
Say that again?
You said our current demand for new houses is 50 a year. Didn't you say that?
Yeah, that's the way it's been lately. At the peak of the boom, we were doing 140, 150 houses a year. The average before that was 40 to 60, somewhere in there. Varied from year to year. We didn't quite make it up to 40 last year, but I think we're sort of getting back up. As far as new housing starts, we've recovered from the recession. And not only did we get the single-family homes, there also were 29 apartments that were built. So I think we actually did, counting multifamily, I think we did 74 units last year.
Would you point out where that reservoir is supposed to be as far as the map is concerned?
I'll say where it was proposed.
Okay.
It was right about here. This is the knoll, and it was down a bit from the knoll, right off the crest, but down in here. That has since, the Public Works Department has looked at that and believes it's not a very good site. And so that is another change that should be made. It's not a good site for the water reservoir, and need to be revisions in that sense. Just another aerial, and here's the knoll. There's you can see right in here, that's a little quarry. It's not on city-owned property. And so the reservoir site is right in this area again. This is the knoll. This is that other high point, and again, there's some pretty nice high points in here. This is the East Devils Lake Boulevard, the part that exists. This is the cul-de-sac in here. This is that block G there where the former developer was considering the hotel and conference center, right in this area. And this is potential, this was block E, potential area for commercial development. So we've got that's all background. We've got the request for proposals that we drafted and you have before you tonight, or this afternoon. Again, I want to find out if we're saying the right things or if we've left things out. I want to get feedback from you on that. The purpose is to get a consultant or consulting team to come in and to revise the 1998 preliminary master plan for the entire Villages of Cascade Head property. As it's stated in the RFP itself, it's to develop a realistic and practical plan for the Villages of Cascade Head PUD. So why do we want to do this? It's to reflect those changes, the sale of the golf course land, conversion of the knoll to open space, possibility of commercial center, also to reflect reality, not just the changes that have happened, but a better sense of what can possibly happen in the Villages of Cascade Head property. Market realities, 1,829 units is a lot to absorb, and that was one thing the former owner was looking at. They realized that if they're going to have that many units, they needed to create an entirely new demand, a new market, not the people that are coming here now, but an entirely new market. And they were starting on a marketing plan for that. It would be a huge undertaking to get people to come create a brand new market like that. It's also engineering realities. We mentioned like the water reservoir site, not a very good site where it is in the plan. And also the fact that in that northern area where there's higher elevations, extending water and sewer service in there is an extremely expensive undertaking. Building a reservoir in there will be expensive. You're talking about, Stephanie or Lila here, they can correct me. We're talking like a reservoir is basically $1 a gallon, and the site it would be in would take tremendous. The place that would be a good site would take a lot of site work and a lot of money just to run the water main out to it. So, so the $1 a gallon is just for the tank. And
I'm going to kind of hit you from the side here, and if you don't have the answer, that's totally okay. Do we have any numbers on how that translates to local jobs if we were to do something like that?
No, I don't know if there's anyone in the city that, I guess there can be some local jobs in site prep and maybe in laying the pipe. I'm not sure. I don't think there's anyone that, competitively can build a several $100,000 or $1 million.
No, I didn't anticipate that, but there's lots of ancillary things that have to go on, and I just was curious do we have a requirement that for a percentage of local help, or no, or that's not possible to do?
You might want to ask Public Works or Urban Renewal, because they do a lot more. My department doesn't do any of infrastructure development, so I don't know if we're allowed to do local set-asides or not. I'm not sure.
I'd just like to keep an eye on that. But if we're going to make a move this large, that try to bring as many local jobs as we can.
Richard, we've got an RFP out on Fernwood. And I'm assuming that you're going to get together with the people that have responded and decide, come up with some kind of a plan for what they're going to do in Fernwood. But how does that relate to us putting together now hiring a consultant for a master plan, when we got this other one where we're going to be doing some of the same thing? I'm not saying how that works.
Well, this is, Fernwood is a much smaller piece. It's a little microcosm. You know, we're talking, I think Fernwood is about 11 acres, and the whole Villages at Cascade Head used to be 525 acres. Now it's like 420 acres, something like that. So it's a small piece, and also it's already had final master plan approval, and what we expect will happen with Fernwood is that the developer, assuming we reach an agreement, would submit a revised final master plan, revise the existing final master plan that's been approved for Fernwood.
So the consultant wouldn't even take that into consideration then when they're coming up with the rest of it?
Not really, because it's looking at pretty much everything other than Maplewood and Fernwood.
Oh, okay.
Those have final master plan approval. Everything else is still out there for fine tuning.
Okay, and Richard, I've heard this two different abbreviations tossed around, RFPs and RFQs. We don't have an RFP on Fernwood, we have an RFQ.
RFQ on Fernwood.
Okay, for the benefit of the folks at home. Can you?
Okay, for Fernwood, we submitted, or we asked for qualifications. There's a request for qualifications, RFQ. And basically, it's saying, show us that you know how to build things, build a quality development, you're capable of doing it, and will work with us to come up with a plan for how that's going to happen.
And then from those submissions, your department would I'm losing my words here, determine if they did meet these qualifications. It wouldn't have to come to us for approval. You would then say yes or no.
Right, and then we got two responses. There's one that several of us sat down and worked out and decided that one of them appeared to have qualifications that were appropriate. We're working on setting up a meeting with them right now, and ultimately, whatever staff says this is what we want to do will have to come back to the City Council for a decision in a public meeting.
Okay. Then the RFP follows. Approve the RFQ.
No, actually, what will happen then is just the proposal. We'll work out a memorandum of understanding and a development agreement.
Okay.
And then it'll be, assuming everything gets approved by the council, then next step is development.
That part would come to us then?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So,
And then,
Richard, I'm sorry, but
like I say, then in this case, for the villages as Cascade Head as a whole, I've prepared a request for proposals. It's different from qualifications. Qualifications is part of it, but it's also saying, tell us how you're going to approach this. We're not asking for the plan itself. We're saying, how are you going to come up with a plan? Are you qualified to do it? What's your ideas for how the plan is going to be developed? And then we look at those and say, okay, we like these, and presumably pick a planner, not a developer, but a planner. The RFQ is actually for a developer for Fernwood. The RFP is for a planner for the whole thing.
Okay, that makes it clear. Thank you.
so on the Fernwood is the utilities are pretty much in, correct?
The water and sewer lines are in, the conduits are there for TV, cable, and phone, I believe. But the wire has not been run.
So normally the developer would pay for those, the sewer and those types of...
Normally they would pay for those things, do it out of pocket for those things.
Now Fernwood, is it Fernwood 2? Fernwood 2 or Fernwood B? What am I thinking?
There's two parts of Fernwood. Phase 1 is the 60, it's already been subdivided, and Phase 2 has not been subdivided. The whole
It
thing
has,
is,
it has utilities to it?
2 does not have utilities to it. Phase 1 has the roughed-in road, water and sewer, and the conduit for the wire utilities.
So on the 1,800 home sites, do we have an idea what the utility expenses, putting in the roads, the infrastructure? Do we have a clue of what that would be? Is that going to be prohibitive?
I think there's, again, that might be something better asked of Public Works Department, but, there's essentially, I guess you could say there's standard estimated cost per foot for a road, for a sewer line, for a water line. It gets more complicated because of the amount of grading required and that kind of thing. So it's can be substantial. The city engineer, Stephanie, gave me gave me figures for the Devils Lake Boulevard extension, just putting in that road with the water and sewer lines and the wire conduits. The bonds that were posted on that was about 1.6 million, and that's about a mile-long road. The actual cost would probably be much, much higher than that, maybe twice that.
That's including roads as well?
Yeah, the road, that was like Boulevard from that entrance area, just past the turnoff to the golf course, up to the cul-de-sac. And they didn't do water and sewer the full length of that either. I think maybe they did water, but not sewer. Is that right?
Yeah, there's water to the whole thing, and sewer to the part that
Okay.
So
So
we
water the full length and sewer up as far as gravity flow would be allowed there.
Yeah, so you'd have to build the pump station, the Salicy pump station, right? And then you have to put in roads and electricity.
For some areas, you would need the pump station at Salicy. For the water booster station was put in, at the Roads End Reservoir. There's a pump that's dedicated just to villages of Cascade Head. And then the West Devils Lake Road sewer pump station serves that entire basin. And so a part of that, which was almost $1.3 million, a part of that relates to the villages of Cascade Head, but much of it doesn't as well, because again, it serves that whole basin.
Then you'd have to do a water tower on top.
If you want to develop, especially the far northern part, there would need to be another reservoir. Am I right? I'm right?
Do we have any way of knowing an estimate on what the price tag would be on that?
We haven't done it. It's not cheap. I know a while ago I was looking at the cost just to run water out to the Holly Farm, and that was going to run about $1 million just to run, no reservoir, just a main out to the Holly Farm. So it's not cheap.
But I guess you'd take that total and divide it by 1,800, and you'd know your cost per.
Yeah, if you had the total for everything, you could do that. Stephanie was telling me a little while ago that on the West Devils Lake Road sewer pump station, dividing the cost of that by the maximum number of dwelling units it would serve is about $300 per unit for that. Existing as well as ones to be built. It's existing homes, because that's just the total number of dwelling units that could be in there, some of which are there now. Is that clear? So, but we have not done any estimates of what it would cost to completely put in sewer and water and other utilities and roads for the whole development. Partly a good reason not to do that is because we don't know exactly what really is realistic to consider developing. I think what the original property owners back in 1998 were thinking, I'm sure there are many, many millions of dollars in infrastructure, but is it even realistic to consider that much of that would be built given the absorption rate we have and the probably premium cost for things like the water reservoir in the far north end of the property. That's the engineering reality is exactly what we're talking about here.
So if you had if you put all those millions of dollars into it and you had half of them unsold, then it would double the cost kind of per unit.
Presumably, you wouldn't put in all the infrastructure. You do it incrementally, so that you're not many millions of dollars out of pocket before you get a dollar back in from a home sale. That's why this was in 3 phases and then in individual blocks. It would just build out slowly was the idea. Also, another reason why to make these a new plan is to incorporate city goals, workforce housing, important one, environmental stewardship, and possible interim uses of the property. In the RFP that you have in front of you, and this now we're getting into the real meat of what the draft says, and have we said things that we shouldn't have said? Should we have said things that we didn't say? We said that we want the plan to include the smart growth principles, to take advantage of compact building design. That's really sort of anti-sprawl kind of thing. Create a range of housing opportunities and choices. So it's not all just someone's vacation home or a large lot development, but that we have workforce housing and that sort of thing in there. Create walkable neighborhoods to reduce motor vehicle dependency. Foster distinctive, attractive communities with a strong sense of place, and preserve open space, natural beauty, and critical environmental areas. And I apologize, some of these slides are going to be, there's a lot of, they're pretty busy, so I tried to do different colors so you could at least break it up. Other ones are strengthen and direct development towards existing communities. And, well, part of that is not just siphon off from the rest of the city. Not to siphon everything off, and so the rest of the city is stagnant, but it develops as an integral part of the entire community. Provide a variety of transportation choices so that transit can go in, people can take their cars, walk, bicycle, whatever. Make development decisions predictable, fair, and cost-effective. Encourage community and stakeholder collaboration in development decisions. And that's so that as the plan develops, the entire affected community is aware of what it is and has a voice in how development will happen. There were some other principles that describe, and actually I should go back. Are there any feedback on are these bad, good?
I am curious on the create a range of housing opportunities and choices. Are we going to? I guess I'm a little hesitant to see 2-story townhouses and row housing, given the aging of the population of this country. 2 floors is impractical for a whole lot of folks, and to promote that kind of housing, while it might be good in an urban environment, is not necessarily good in a rural environment. I'm also wondering if we will make room for things like cluster housing, or possibly, or small homes in cluster housing. And what's the other one?
Cottage clusters?
No, not accessory dwellings. What? No. No, small housing in compact groups, so that you form a little, like a
We'll call them cottage clusters.
cottage clusters. That was
Yeah.
what I was looking at. I mean, is that kind of are we looking at high-end stuff again, or rows of townhouses and condos, or are we looking at a full range of stuff, including cottage clusters and so on?
The intent is to look at the full range, to recognize. I didn't put it in here, but one of the things that it talks about in the RFP is looking at economic and demographic information to say what kinds of housing would be appropriate. As we, it's been mentioned many times, we have a relatively older population here. If you look at the population pyramid, for Lincoln City, typically, in a population pyramid, you have many young people, and then it gets up, and by the time you're up to 100 years, you're sort of down to no people, but or very few people. But our population pyramid sort of looks like a tree. There aren't that very many young people, and then you get up around 55, there's many more. Maybe a mushroom is a better look at it. But so we have to recognize the realities of the fact that we do have an aging population. I'm in a two-story house, and I have very bad knees, so I'm acutely aware of the importance of single-family or single-level houses. So.
And I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm going to agree and disagree in that I know we have an aging population, but is that partially because of what we've offered? Have we excluded a younger population from our city based on the type of houses we have and the idea that you can't afford to live here? Would we attract more citizens if we had lower priced homes? Or more options for
I don't think it's that simple. I think that's a piece of it. I think there's a lot of other factors that play in. The jobs.
Right, and that's where I'm getting to is as I go around from store to store, business to business, I don't see 60 and 70-year-olds working in there. And these people have to live somewhere. And so are we going to continue just to build homes that will attract people that need to be serviced rather than the people who will be servicing? You follow what I'm saying? That's what I really want to see is more of that available for people who want to live here full-time, work here full-time, not just simply retire, which is a great part, though.
Yeah, the good thing about retired people is that they bring money with them. But there's certainly there is a need for the working families, for jobs for people. One of the big problems is attracting the jobs, and again, things interweave so much. You can't get people if you don't have affordable housing, but what's affordable can be a function of how good the jobs are. And there's a feedback loop. They each feedback on each other, and there's other things to consider too. I don't. I've lived here 25 years. When I first came here, I run into people when they get school-age kids that leave. There were real concerns about the quality of education, and we need to make sure those kinds of things. I know that things are very different now, but I know that was an issue, and we need so many different things that need to come together and play together for to be able to make the community thrive.
I know you're aware of multi-generational planning, and it seems to me we have an opportunity. Older people are getting ready they want to downsize. They've had the material things, they're kind of done with that. And they also miss their grandkids, and they're looking for a small house, maybe with a little garden and back. And people that need workforce housing generally are younger families that have small children, and they want smaller houses because they can't afford more. So you have those pieces of the puzzle that seem to fit together. And through history, till recently, we've always had, grandma and grandpa living beside or living with the parents who live with the kids. We've kind of gotten away from that, but I think the trend is now more to get back into that. So if we could be respectful of smaller houses, are less hard on our forests and less footprint. And some things I think just make a natural match. And I sure hope that we can consider that. Parents, workforce houses need babysitters. Grandparents are great babysitters. So.
Well, that's one of the reasons why people have accessory dwelling units. They're also known as granny flats. It's where the grandparents live in the small house, and the family, the family with the kids lives in the larger house, and the grandparents are there to help take care of the kids. The family's there to help take care of the grandparents. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it is becoming prevalent again, where you have multi-generational households instead of one or two. One of the things in Lincoln City, though, the average household size it's like 2.1 persons, 2.2, somewhere around there. But I think we may well be seeing some changes on that.
And if I could, on the walkable neighborhoods, I haven't spent a lot of time up there, but it seems like it's got a lot of hills.
It does have a lot of hills.
How much effort do we really want to put into that? That if it's not going to get used. I just think of my property on Coast, and I could count on one hand the number of people I've seen walk up that hill in a year. It's avoided.
Well, I'll say that, especially if there's going to be commercial development in here, I think it's really important to have walkability. I think if you don't have walkability, if you don't have sidewalks, people aren't going to walk.
Right. I'm just saying, is it
if you do have it
feasible? Do we have enough flat-ish land there? Yeah. Okay, well, that's all.
Even now, there's people walking up in the Villages Cascade Head property all the time. It's a great place to walk dogs right now, because they take them off the leash and let them run. That's what people do, and it's great. Even along West Devils Lake Boulevard, where there's a concrete sidewalk, and people get down the sidewalk, and with their dogs are just walking, getting exercise. Whenever I go up there, especially in that area, in the area where the road is, you see people all the time walking through there.
Mr. Townsend.
If you don't have the option,
no, I understand.
Won't be there.
Mr. Townsend, I know you didn't mean it because it's designated as a park, and I know the city ordinance is
I didn't say they legally let their dogs off the leash.
Leash is on the dog.
Yeah. I knew that was coming. But I do see it.
But I understand the potential.
Yeah, it happens.
Yes.
Well, and just
Mr. Townsend, before you, pardon me, Mayor.
No, go ahead. I've been taking all the time.
Before you leave those objectives, I think they were quite inclusive. I think we're looking at compact building design, and we're looking at a range of housing opportunities, which I think is good. And we're trying to encourage predictable, fair, and cost-effective decisions. So I like your list.
Thank you.
And I guess I'd like to just throw in one last plug, as I continually plug for, is something along the transitional housing in a senior community, so we can go from independent living to full assisted.
Mr. Townsend, before you got into those development principles, but I'm noted by the RFQ up above a couple paragraphs before those. To me, when I read this, I thought it was very clear that the city wants to emphasize it is open to amendments to any or all of these plans to accommodate creative land planning and development for Fernwood. To me, if I were the developer at the other end reading this, that's a signal that says, you're wide open to whatever I can come up with. So I think if your question was, were you inclusive in your list, I think you were, but you went even further, which I applaud, that says, bring me your ideas, we're open to change and we'll assist. So I think you've done the job as it went out for any and all. Because the concern I have, and we're all faced with as we look at this, a plan that was approved in '98, and here it is, 2016. Those plans with townhouses, condos, is not necessarily going to fit today's market.
Right.
And, I just noted, it's amazing that, the vision didn't include any rental, a multifamily, which today is very much in need in this area.
Yeah. I think that makes the point of why we need to
Amend it.
need to change the plan.
Yeah.
And maybe saying revise it is not the right word. Maybe it's trash it and start over kind of thing. So, or at least make major revisions to it.
Yeah. The question I have, though, is this was done in '96, '98, and here it is 2016, and your math talked about, realistically 50 houses, maybe out of the villages on an ongoing basis. The question I have is do you really need to do a master plan, and I may have it backwards, but a master plan final for the whole villages when we're, quite frankly, the Fernwood is going to take, a good, 2-3 years housing stock right there, if you're lucky, kind of thing. And by the time creeps on and you move to a next phase and this kind of stuff, we're always amending, or should be amending that master plan. Is that okay? I mean, is the master plan not so fine that it's so restrictive? I guess where I'm going is kind of where the situation we're in now is, today, 2016, you can look at this plan and see, quite frankly, why it hasn't moved ahead. Why there's only a handful of houses in this complex.
So you're wondering if in 20 years we'll be in the same situation?
Well, yeah, and are we, I know we need a vision, and that's what I'm struggling with. What could this 300 acres look like, or should, for some guidance? And I like the idea of, some commercial, the town center, the walkable, all this kind of stuff, but to stay away from anything so finite that it's almost restrictive and not open to, whether, as Wes talked about, cottages or, maybe not in Fernwood, but another of the portion of the villages might be very apropos, but maybe not today.
I think ideally it would end up being a more dynamic document than the current plan is.
Okay. Good.
And conceivably it could even say future. We wouldn't even consider thinking about that. But it may be that the way it's set up now with the 3 village phases, maybe wasn't the best way to go. Maybe we realize that things need to be shifted around a little bit. This is the area that's likely to develop, and this we'll just leave to someday in the future or something.
Because that was my first question, was, how much did all of this previous work figure into the failure of the development of it? And I want to make sure that we don't do that again.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that contributed to the failure was the recession, the housing bubble burst. They were working on, they had a lot of money, and they did a lot of work right before the crunch hit. So they had a tremendous amount of money invested, and then nothing would sell. And they just got nailed. So, and there's things like condos. There's hundreds of condos in here. As my understanding is, you can't get money for condos.
Right.
As a consumer, you can't borrow money for a condo. So that's, at least in the short run, that's not a realistic use.
So, Richard, on the 1,800 house lots, wouldn't it be prudent to at least get some estimates on what it's going to cost to bring that development to fruition before we proceed on investing any time in that, or resources? I mean, first of all, it's going to be a ways down the road time-wise, and, conditions change as we saw in 2008. But secondly, if it's going to cost, so many millions of dollars to get the infrastructure in, that the cost per lot doesn't justify the front-end load as far as the investment goes. Shouldn't we have some estimates on that?
Well, part of this, as explained in the RFP, is that we want to look at realistically what is economically and engineeringly feasible. Because we believe that the existing plan is not. In both cases, it's not. And bring it more in line with reality is what we're looking at. Whether it's worth the time to say if we built the 1,829 units, how much would the infrastructure cost? I mean, off the top of my head, I'd say it'd be nice to know, but, it'd be, how much would it cost to charter a plane and fly around the world? It'd be great to know, but I'm never going to do it. And we're never going to see the 1,829 units as currently planned develop. So it may not be worth the time or effort that goes into it.
And if this question is not part of this discussion, but another one, feel free to let me know. One concern I've had is that since the city owns a large chunk of all this, have we determined, or do we have a set parameter for what we will charge based on market value so that we don't affect property values? Do we have some kind of safety valve that says we're not going to cut it and undercut other people's properties that they're trying to sell?
Well, one thing to remember is we're not developers. As with Fernwood, we're talking about, here's the goals we want for that piece of property. Developer, what will you pay us for that property, and what's the plan for development? You go do it. We won't, these other areas, I don't see the city developing. I see the city selling them off bit by bit, saying,
But we have the opportunity to undercut. I mean, we could sell it quite cheaply. And that's all I'm asking is there some kind of mechanism in place to say, okay, let's not go crazy here and have it affect someone else just for our benefit?
Because it's a public resource, of course, we have to get fair market value for it.
Okay, that's perfect. Then we do. Okay, thank you.
And these other principles are also in the RFP, beginning on page 6. Respect for natural conditions and protected species, contribute to the overall character of the city, respect the surrounding property values and land uses. And the idea that obviously there is we don't want to put in a chromium refinery right next to a residential area or something. So, even though there might be a demand for a chromium refinery somewhere in the city. So, to reflect the engineering realities of the site, particularly with respect to water in the higher elevations. And economic realities.
I have a problem with the wording on that one, including the demand for vacation housing. That could be interpreted as vacation rental housing.
Yes, it could.
And we're only reflecting on the economic reality, which VRDs are an economic reality. I mean, I had the same concern initially, but I read it again, and this is not committing us to VRDs by any means.
It also can be interpreted to be second homes.
Right.
And you may recall the proposals related to VRDs. I don't want to open that box too much, but this area is zoned R175, which under the proposals that the city manager is talking about would be an area of no VRDs. Or there'd be, if they are allowed, it would be at a low number, perhaps, a small number of nights. But that's up to you.
Is, going a little bit aside, the next one was talking about the commercial town center within the PUD, which I think is a cool idea in my estimation. But anyway, but what about, I mean, there's land there that might be difficult to deal with as far as a campus type situation. I mean, you can think of educational campus, or it could be a facility, and I'm just using this as an example, such as Intel or Nike or something like that. There are some sections of this, especially in the northern part, where it might be a little difficult and a little tricky to do, but is there any allowance for if somebody walked in and said, geez, I'd really like to buy this hillside and create this, which would in turn create jobs? Or is there no room for that in this kind of a proposal?
If you're talking about like an Intel or a Nike, that would be commercial. That would be basically, you're talking about a rezone, because it's zoned residential. We do allow, in our present ordinance, we allow up to 15% of the site to be commercial, but the list of things that are allowed to be there is actually it's drawn from the recreation commercial zones. You're talking about motels, stores, and that kinds of thing. It isn't, an office campus or something like that. Frankly, I think a wonderful thing to have there would be some kind of a 4-year college.
Yeah, I agree.
It'd be great if we could attract somebody, because as I've said before, the economics of a college, the economic impact is the exact opposite of what we have now, because they're here during the off-season spending money, and they're gone during the peak season. So it would be great. I don't know if we can attract a college, but I'd love to see it. So. And it could be a specialized college, an art college, or whatever. I'm not sure.
But what I guess I was asking is there room within this whole thing to do something like that, or would it require a major revision?
Frankly, we're in a way going back to square one. I think there's room for just about anything, and it may be that the way to go, as we talked about a little bit, is saying, okay, we're going to plan for this area. This area, we're going to reserve, and we'll talk about in 20 years or whatever, or when an opportunity presents itself or something. Maybe that's the way to go. Variety of housing types, including affordable housing, workforce housing, and to remove the golf course land to reflect the fact it's no longer in the PUD. So the consultant's role is assess the opportunities and obstacles on the site, understand the significance of the property in basically in all aspects of the city, what this property means to the city, not just housing choices and environmental stewardship, but in general, how it affects our economy. Things you're talking about, not depressing the cost, the value of real estate and that kind of thing. Consultant also would be developing or identifying development opportunities, and then draft a compelling plan that will carry us forward into the future for the property.
Do you have a estimate of the cost for the consultant?
I put in the RFP $50,000. It's probably realistic.
Are we budgeted for that?
We have enough money in the budget for that.
Okay.
So from the proposal, we would want to see a cover letter, a narrative demonstrating the understanding of what we're trying to accomplish with this, qualifications of the team members, description of the tasks, the process that the consultant would go through in developing the plan and what their costs are, and references from similar projects, so we know that someone who knows what they're doing. And then we would look for selecting a consultant. We want to make sure we get a complete application that shows understanding of the project. Is the proposed approach a good one? And that's where creativity comes in. Are they coming up with something good? Their experience, and their demonstrated ability to come up with a plan such as this in a timely manner, and their references.
What is the timeline that you're, quote, thinking of?
Ideally, I was hoping, I would like to see this RFP go out in the next week or two, if we get your assent, and maybe a few weeks for a response, and conceivably by the end of the year. Maybe not that quick. I don't know. We'll just have to see what consultants think is realistic.
If I could, Richard, and forgive me if I'm being naive on this, but why do we need a consultant? Is this something we cannot handle here? We don't have the expertise or the equipment, or what don't we have here that they can bring to this party?
We could do it with our own staff if we don't do some other things. We're a very lean planning department, and just the we'll call current planning, the development proposals that we get. We have a timeline for those. We've got other planning projects going on, the Parks Master Plan, NELSCOT, economic opportunities. Well, that's actually good. Yeah, the comp plan. There's a lot of things going on, and I guess so. The question becomes, which ball do we drop? Conceivably we could do it ourselves, but I think it would be good to have a consultant that we can work with and guide, and they bring a different perspective than what we have. And well, what do you think about this? This is something that happens here. Excuse me. And I think a way to get things done more quickly using a consultant.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, just a note about the process, and typically, if we're going to hire a planner or a planning firm, that's a personal services contract under our code, personal professional services. Mm-hmm. If the contract amount exceeds $25,000 but is less than $100,000, we only need to, we don't have to follow a formal selection process. We could just follow an informal solicitation of at least three vendors, basically three planning consultants. And frankly, $50,000 contract is up to $50,000 is delegated to the city manager. So I don't think that staff is really here saying we need you to approve a contract to hire a planner. I think what they're asking for is what should the contract address, and in terms of what is it that the scope of work that Richard has outlined. So at a minimum, for example, we have to address the fact that the golf course property is no longer in there. We have to, for example, address the fact that the open space land has been redesignated, needs to either be removed or somehow addressed in the master plan. So from a public contracting point of view, the staff doesn't need you to approve the contract. What they're really asking for is your input on the substance of what kind of design do you want to see. Do you want to see a multifamily project or a town center project? That's really why we're here.
And I wasn't asking it to demand approval from us. It wasn't even going that track, so I apologize if that's what it sounded like. I've asked this question on a couple of occasions of, do we really need a consultant? And I really haven't been completely satisfied with the answers. And I don't know that I've been completely satisfied with the work the consultants have brought us. And so I'm just kind of thinking out loud from the people that I hear from in the community that say, why didn't you guys just do that on your own? So I'm kind of asking that question for them, not that you need to seek our approval.
I actually wasn't commenting on your comment. I was
Oh,
just
okay.
kind of clarifying. There was another
Well, I'm
issue.
not commenting on your comment either. There you go.
There are some other issues. There's references to OAR 048, 137-048, which is typically not implicated unless the contract's over $100,000. So we probably don't have to. We can if we want to, but we don't have to follow some of those processes. So in case you're giving the blessing tonight, I'd like to reserve the right to talk to the planner about whether or not you really want to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Richard.
So really what I'm asking for this afternoon is, do you think this RFP is on the right track, that heading in the appropriate direction? And again, have we said things we shouldn't say and not said things that we should? And I guess I'm sensing that things are generally positive.
I think it's a good approach, you know, from my standpoint. I think there's enough leeway there for the consultant to give us information.
And we're not committing ourselves to anything.
Right, right.
I like the approach, Richard. I think it's sensible. But I'd like to reaffirm to any citizen who feels that we're not addressing senior housing or workforce housing or apartments, that we are. We're leaving housing options open for anything that we deem necessary or that we can afford or that's practical. Project objective, second one, is create a range of housing opportunities and choices. And that, to my mind, includes senior housing, workforce housing, apartments, et cetera. So I'd just like to reaffirm that for anybody who's concerned.
Right, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I really appreciate every time I hear the word flexibility and options. It's so nice to hear that we're not being so rigid that we're going to drive people away or limit our options. So well done. I'm in agreement. I do have one question, though. You brought up public transportation within the framework of this. I guess I'm trying to figure out how that's going to work because we're not providing the public transportation. Is it just simply to make an area wider, bump outs, or not bump outs, but cutaways?
I think one of the things we would look at is, put in places where there could be like a transit stop if
okay.
transit gets extended and that kind of thing. So,
Okay. And then we just have to get them up there.
if there's enough people just to reasonably support it, then eventually the transit will head up into that area. But we don't want to design it so that it can't be used for...
No, I understand. I was just trying to figure out what you meant. Okay. Thank you. And I'm in favor.
So,
Mr. Townsend, for those concerned with VRDs, if we wanted to initiate a, quote, ban, unquote, on VRDs, this is not the time to do that. This is a preliminary master plan, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity for that in the future, is there not?
Right, there will be. And, if whatever way you decide to go, that's sort of a different thing. It is our land, so we can, it's public land, it's owned by the city. We can put whatever development constraints we want on it. Basically, we're imposing it on ourselves, and that affects positively or negatively what we would get for the land when we sell it. But that's a policy decision that you all will have to make, or may make from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
If I could, add on to that, Chester, as a VRD proponent, I can speak for myself and a lot of others in that nobody cares. Because as long as you know going in, I haven't heard anyone say, we need more of them. It's just, hey, wait a minute, we got them now, let's figure out what to do with them. So I think it would be very feasible just to say, don't put any up there at all, and nobody would squawk about that at all. It's just about knowing going in.
Yeah. So I just want to, I'm just sort of closing with, we do have quality development, and these kinds of things can happen. This is, the Rhodes End area. This is a cottage cluster. And it's specifically designed, this is up in Washington State, to be affordable workforce housing, quite high density, small houses. Land costs are low, the construction costs are low, but they're nicely detailed. That's one of the things, they didn't go cheap on, at least on the exterior details. It looks very nice, very attractive. It doesn't have to be, a plywood box.
That's something you could take pride in.
Yeah, exactly. So are we on the right path?
Yes.
One more comment, if I may, Mr. Townsend. I know Samaritan has issues with affordable housing, as does the casino. And I hope that we partner with them as much as we can to potentially meet their needs as well as ours.
Yeah, I've had some very, very brief preliminary discussions with another important entity in the city about workforce housing and some other opportunities. And I think that there's tremendous opportunities with this piece of land. We've got to just look at partnerships and what we can do with it to really build community with it. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
I have one comment. When we purchased the villages, there was a lot of negative comment about the fact that the city shouldn't be involved in owning so much property, et cetera. But I think that taking this step shows that we're being good stewards of that property and that we're actually taking the right approach to making more opportunities available to our residents of Lincoln City.
Thanks, Richard.
Well done. Anyone else? Is that it? Mr. Chandler? Anything, are we actually done? You did it. Anything from council? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Mics are off.